Folks have their ballots in hand. Some of you have already returned them, filled them out, returned them. I did. In fact, I already got my text message from King County saying it has been received, signature verified, it will be counted, thumbs up emoji. I added the emoji. I thought it would have added some, personality to the emails and texts I get. But some of you still have them in hand and you are wondering when you should vote. For some people, you're waiting until the last minute because you believe that will cut down on potential fraud. It has no bearing whatsoever. If someone's going to cheat, they're going to cheat. They're not going to cheat. Good news. Jason, you're so trusting. We'll get into that in a second. Some of you are wondering, hey, maybe something will change the way I'm going to vote. I don't see how that will be possible at this point. I don't know if there's any race where someone who is a Republican, because they're actual Republicans, will change their vote on either the local elections or the federal elections. But I do know that some of you perhaps live in the 43rd legislative district and you've not yet filled out your ballot because you see two people running with D's next to their name, Sean Scott and Andrea Suarez. Now, one should not have a D next to their name. Ironically, it's the stranger that believes that Andrea Suarez should not have a D next to her name. As someone who actually knows Andrea Suarez, I can tell you, since no one is perfect, yes, she should have a D next to her name. It is Sean Scott, who is not really a Democrat. He is a socialist. He is a socialist. And if he is elected, he becomes the most dangerous lawmaker in Olympia. I don't know how he will use that power of representing the mostly Seattle district. I don't know how effective he will be at the beginning because he's still going to be a, first-year lawmaker if he gets that far. But he eventually will stay in that position until he decides not to get it anymore, not to continue. That's generally how these races unfold. Andrea Suarez, who is, yes, in fact, a Democrat, actually shares most of our views when it comes to homelessness, policing, drug use, because she doesn't view them as ideological. I don't view them as ideological. I don't think it's ideological to say we should push to get people indoors. I know it's crazy. It's a conservative talking point. I don't think it is ideological to say we are hurting people by enabling their drug use. Oh no, fascist. I don't believe that it is ideological to say criminals ought to be prosecuted. Oh my God, he wants a police state, literally. No. I don't think that's a conservative viewpoint. I think it's a viewpoint that's shared by everyone regardless of their political positions, except for the crazies on the far left, who Sean Scott represents. And because Andrea Suarez is a threat to the radicals, they are acting the way radicals act. Now, we've seen some of their behaviors in the past, not necessarily in this particular race, but we've seen how they act. These are the Antifa folks who will turn to literal violence in order to see political wins. But they also do something that is incredibly petty, incredibly childish, which is destroy campaign lawn signs, which is so incredibly petty. So petty. They should not get a pass. But as Andrea Suarez pointed out in a video she posted on her social media, it's not a great idea to trash something that belongs to a candidate who actually knows how to track down trash and deals with trash every day because of the work she does with the homeless.
So I found all my signs in a dumpster here in Madison Valley a couple hours just after Local 32 union members who built our state installed them for me because they believe in democracy. So the far left and the haters, see, they don't believe in democracy. But they kind of mess with the wrong person because I'm really good about finding trash. And I found my signs and I'll be reinstalling them.
Now, there was a philosopher who said something that actually ironically, this post reminded me of. And it's not, well, depending on, I suppose, your background, you either know the philosopher or you don't. But this philosopher said, haters gonna hate. And that's precisely what these haters are doing. They're hating.
Was that Rousseau that said that?
I don't want to give it away. I feel like people should do the research on their own. I will say that it was an Italian philosopher. So that maybe that gives a hint. Someone who was all into the classics, but then this philosopher made a jump into poetry. It was very kind of weird. But haters gonna hate, and that's what we're dealing with, and that's what she's dealing with. You've got people who are out there doing what they can to ensure that a candidate doesn't have as fair of a shot as possible to win an election. You already have media that is all but ignoring this particular candidate. I will note, however, that it was the Seattle Times that gave Andrea Suarez the endorsement over Sean Scott. How far that goes in Seattle, don't know. Don't know. Not in this district, because it has a lot of the crazies. A lot of the crazies. But this is someone who is in a very important legislative race, and yet somehow the local television stations aren't really talking about this particular candidacy. Not even the competition between a Democrat and a socialist, when it certainly appears like the socialist is the front runner. Maybe they don't want to upset the socialist base because they're scared that their anchors will be harassed or their property vandalized. Don't know. But I know that this is one of those races that's incredibly important. All the races are important. But this is one that Republicans can actually help a moderate Democrat win. We're not going to agree with her on some issues, anything around abortion, for example. We're not going to agree with Andrea Suarez. That's okay, because you are choosing between two people who identify as Democrats. You can do a write-in, which I understand why someone would do. It won't count for anything because there's no write-in candidates who are running a campaign and have registered a campaign in this district. But I understand why some people don't want to vote for either of the Democrats. And I would be with you if both Democrats were pretty much the same. But we are guaranteed to have someone who is reasonable on a lot of the issues that we care about most with Andrea Suarez. And so Republicans can actually help her win this. You just have to be willing to vote for a Democrat. And maybe for some of you, it means holding your nose and doing it. But I guarantee you, you will be much, and I can't say that enough, much more concerned with the direction of this state if Sean Scott wins. And that general message is the one that I have for the folks who are still considering not voting in the race for governor, because Dave Reichert was not your first choice. Your first choice was, unfortunately, someone who had no shot at winning this election. And that does not mean that Dave Reichert had an easy chance of cruising to victory. He never did. It was always still going to be very difficult for Dave Reichert to win in this state against Bob Ferguson. But he has the better chance. And for any Republican who refuses to back Dave Reichert, who's running for governor against a fringe, progressive Bob Ferguson, you are no different than the Republicans who say, I'm a vote for Kamala Harris because I want to save democracy from Trump. You're not a conservative if you vote for Kamala Harris. You're a conservative who uses that identity in a way to hurt the Republican Party. That doesn't make you a conservative. If you vote for someone who is as far to the left as Kamala Harris, you're not a conservative. Sorry.